I'm Phoebe. I'm a delivery manager at Co-op, and I'm going to be talking to you about getting people to care about accessibility when you're delivering digital products. And in this talk, I guess I'm going to be telling you a story about how I got that very wrong, on the hope that you don't make the same mistakes that I did and experience the same, I guess, frustration and heartbreak. I'm going to give you a bit of context of why I needed people to care. So I was working in a team whereby we were designing a number of tools, like digital tools for their business, but they were using a different team to actually physically build them. And we were running a number of focused design crits that were focusing on assisted technology and how our designs were responding with those. And it was becoming quite clear that a lot of these tools we were building just fundamentally wouldn't be usable with people using those assisted technologies, which was not only upsetting, but also I was starting to get quite nervous because we were rolling a number of these design patterns across more and more tools. And I was nervous about accumulating design debt and technical debt. And we were investing so much money into them. So I needed to try and put forward a case to have this team prioritize these changes over new requests that were being asked of them. And when you're trying to convince other people, you're usually trying to work out what do we think are the most compelling reasons why, and do you have a shared sense of principles? And we knew with this team they weren't the same. So we took the angle of trying to be more commercially focused. We put a presentation together about how not only are we actively excluding these users from our business, but also reputationally that could impact the rest of the cooperative group. And then we talked about the commercial impact of that once someone knows that your tool isn't accessible, why would they use anything else? And what was quite frustrating is the response to this was straight away I was asked for numbers of how many users that would be. And unfortunately, we weren't tracking that type of data as we were, say, the types of browsers people were using or devices. So I couldn't put a figure on it. But also, what was frustrating is I then found out after talking about this that they weren't the right people to make the decision. They were a bit more hierarchical. So I had to go up the chain. And what was frustrating is no matter how high up I went, I just kept on getting the same responses, and it was starting to get really frustrating that I couldn't get these people to care about it and prioritize it, which I guess explains the reason for my next response, which I'm not proud of. I became quite mean. And what I ended up doing was saying, right, well, if you don't address these problems, when you come to want to roll them out on a platform, which we had a bit more authority on, I said I wouldn't allow them to do that unless they made these changes. And understandably, the response to this was one of anger, frustration, panic. How they're going to tell their boss that they can't. What was silly of me in this instant is not only was it a bit tit for tat, and I was pushing my problem onto them, is ultimately I didn't have the right plan in place to then help support them do that. I had a few ideas, but not how to address the already large amount of technical estate we'd built up. And so the conversation died. What I then did next was, after a bit of a breather and trying to work out what I could do, I was able to get some budgets. And I recruited a number of participants who used a wide range of assisted technology. And we chose to do interviews with them across one of their favourite tools. This tool was an inheritance tax calculator. So you put your details in, it tells you if you have an inheritance tax bill, and then we tell you how you might siphon part of that off to protect your family rather than it going to the tax man. And this was one tool out of a range of suite, which the business are using as a new way of trying to, I guess, communicate with their customers. It was a brand new strategy for them. And we invited that team to these interviews, and then we also ran a number of show and tells, and we created some edited clips. And this is where finally the door managed to open. When you see a user struggling to get past the first step of a tool that you've spent a lot of time designing, building, and investing money in as well, which is going to transform, as I said, the way you communicate with your customer, and it's going to transform the way you do business. Seeing them struggle, and not only struggle, but get really quite frustrated. You know, they've not been able to get through the first step, and it's probably the fifth or sixth time that day they're encountering the same problem. This is where the conversation started around, like, well, actually, yeah, this is important. And from there, we've now been able to prioritize a plan of how to address some of the things we can fix immediately. And we have a plan more long term of how to try and address that across the rest of these tools. And what's been really good about it is I've not been the only one now to try and put a plan together. We're doing that collectively. But the thing that's really exciting is, as a group, we're now talking about accessibility the same way as we would talk about performance and security. We're talking about it quite regularly. We're talking about it at a design level before it even goes into build, where we're able to highlight where we think things might go wrong and have the confidence to say, actually, I don't know how a user will respond to this. Let's go and do some testing before we build it. And it's just really nice to see that shift happen in such a short space of time. So I guess what I'm saying to you is, rather than beating about the bush and trying to frame these things in different angles that you think people would like, just put it in front of users. Just go to that extra effort, and you'll be surprised how quickly that conversation will open up. Thank you.